guys, and welcome to another episode of the, of course, Cavalier Family Show. Except that this month is going to be a whole lot different than what you guys are usually hearing as far as what we do on a regular basis. Now, I do know that every month we do pick from a different year, different timeline, and we discuss the top five cartoons, TV shows, movies, music, all that kinds of stuff, except kind of wanted to do something different this year. And as far as these shows go, for the first two, unfortunately, I will be by myself. However, Kevin and Ro will be back later on, just, family business and stuff. And not only that, but of course, down here in Florida, we were affected by Hurricane Ian, as well as obviously you already know many other Floridians too. So hearts and thoughts go out to all the families who were affected. Now, as far as this show goes for the month of October, what we will be doing is we'll be sharing, of course, our experiences as far as when it goes to paranormal activity, hauntings, stuff like that. So, again, this is going to be a little different. It is going to be Halloween based. So this first week, it will be, of course, the top Halloween shows or TV movies that was showcased on, of course, television. And yes, Disney Channel does count too. So as far as the updates go, as in regards to the show, that's what it is. Now, of course, like to thank Kevin Holmes as well as Justin Dye. Kevin Holmes did a lot of the visual aspects to it. Justin Dye did a lot of the musical elements to it. Of course, Justin is also to the Stars We Return, who is also a partnership with Cavalier Family, which we, of course, bounce off one another. You have seen him on the show. Of course, he is, of course, a member of Cavalier Family, just like Kevin. Also like to thank all of the researchers out there. Kevin, who's usually co-hosts with me, as well as Stephen Dawson, who's, of course, researched in the past. This month, specifically, I did the research because I kind of had an idea of where we wanted to go. So sit back, relax. Let's go ahead and do the Halloween special. And just like that, like I said, this show is going to be the top five top Halloween shows or movies. The information does come from the website specific. It was kind of hard finding all the information. However, this research comes from imdb.com. The also info comes from imdb.com. Now, some of the honorable mentions was, of course, Don't Look Under the Bed, which was a Disney Channel exclusive. Michael Jackson's Halloween. Halloween is Grinch Night, which is, fun fact, the first appearance of the Grinch. A lot of people think, of course, first appearance was the Christmas special. No, first appearance was actually the Halloween episode for the Grinch. That's where you got to start off. Elvira's Halloween special, Under Wraps, which is another Disney Channel exclusive. Casper Saves Halloween, and of course, my personal favorite, Goosebumps. A lot of you grew up with it. I do recently have purchased the first editions of some of the books, as well as the very first book too. So as far as number one goes on the top Halloween shows and movies, of course, has to give it up to the classic Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. It did have a 8.2 out of 10. It did originally air on PBS. Of course, it's about the Peanuts gang celebrates Halloween while Linus waits for the Great Pumpkin. This was directed by Bill Melendez. Writer was Charles M. Schultz. Starred Peter Robbins as Charlie Brown, Christopher Shea as Linus, Sally Dreyer as Lucy, Kathy Steinberg as Sally Brown, Lisa DeFaria as Patter. Maybe, of course, the one that always pulls the football. I can't think of the name right now. Peppermint Patty, that's it. Bill Mendez as Snoopy, Glenn Mendelsohn as Shrouder, and Gabriel de Ferreira Ritter as Pigpen. Of course, after the special originally aired, children all over the country sent candy to Charlie Brown out of sympathy, which is unique and fun just because of the kind hearts from children. Other fun fact is Lucy's signature pulling the football from Charlie Brown actually originally came from this episode. Sally's line, "Welcome to the 20th century," was originally "Welcome to 1962" in the comic strip, which, if you do not know, Charlie Brown used to be a comic strip before it became a TV show, like many of the other older cartoons that we grew up on. I personally didn't really grow up with this cartoon growing up, as what many have done. This was kind of older on period of my life. I recently did buy this movie because of course Target comes out with it on Blu-ray and such. I also have the Thanksgiving one, and I do have the Christmas special one. The Thanksgiving one is a kind of controversial within the past year or two, only because it shows a lot of the characters prominently white on one side, and then of course you have the character who represents the black community on the left sitting by himself. So of course that's controversy, and there's a lot of going on about canceling that movie, as today we're canceling everything. Number two, of course, goes out to the legendary of The Simpsons, Treehouse of Horror. If you don't know what this is, for every season after the first, so the first season never had this. It started from the second, moved on forward. 3 spooky stories would be written and aired during Halloween season. Originally created by James L. Brooks, Matt Groening, and Sam Simon, it did star Dan Castellaneta as Homer, Nancy Cartwright as Bart, Harry Shearer as Ned Flanders, Julie Cavalier as Marge, Yeardley Smith as Lisa, Hank Azaria as Mo, and so much more. It was actually the 6th installment was the first to use 3D animation in The Simpsons. So the 6th installment within the series, it's pretty good. I believe that's when Homer goes into the computer itself. So fascinating. Check that out if you like, of course, a little bit of history. Kang and Kratos were introduced in the first season of Treehouse of Horror. And if I'm not mistaken, there is a Treehouse of Horror episode where it showcases that Maggie may be the daughter of Kang and Kratos. That's not actually Homer's daughter. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but from my understanding is that's actually how that was. Number 3 is, of course, most famous as far as the Disney Channel goes, and that is Halloween Town. It did score 6.6 out of 10. It was a Disney Channel original movie. It's about when a young girl living with her secret witch mother learns she too is a witch. She must help her witch grandmother save Halloween Town from evil forces. It was directed by Dwayne Dunham. Writers was Paul Bernabom, John Cooksey, and Allie Marie Matheson. Starred Debbie Reynolds, which of course is Carrie Fisher's mother. It did star Kimberly J. Brown, Judith Hogue, Joey Zimmerman, Philip Van Dyke, Emily Roski, and Ramid Thomas. So fun fact, St. Helens, Oregon is where the original Halloween Town was filmed, and they welcome tourists. In fact, they have a month-long Spirit of Halloween Town event to celebrate the October holiday and allow fans of the movie to explore the town. They even try to recreate parts of the set, like the giant jack-o'-lantern in the town square. During the filming, though, of the 3 Halloween Town films, Debbie Reynolds would walk around introducing herself as Princess Leia's mother, because let's face it, she is. According to Kimberly J. Brown, the flame coming from the hairdryer was actually real. So if you guys don't remember, this is the sequence where they have to try to get ingredients for the potion and stuff, and they end up going to a hairdresser where a werewolf is there and he's doing the hair. And so the flames from the hairdryer was real and no special effects were involved. I grew up with this movie. I grew up with the second movie. I didn't really watch the third one or after that. From my understanding, Kimberly J. Brown didn't really come back for those. It was only the first 2, which of course are the only 2 that matters. Actually, you know what? No, I stand corrected. She came back in the third one, but in the fourth one, it was kind of like a new start. So I stand corrected on that. So please allow me to correct myself. And with that, of course, I do know that was my personal experience with it. It is a staple for Halloween. A lot of people like that movie, similar to Hocus Pocus. It has created a captive audience as far as the cult favorites. The other TV show, which actually scared a lot of individuals when this first came out, and the iconic acting, of course, from Tim Curry too. And this was 1990s It, that aired on ABC, which is now owned by Disney. I don't know if Disney actually owned ABC during that time period, but it'd be cool if they did. It did gain 6.8 out of 10. So basically, the actual movie takes place in 1960, and seven preteen outcasts fight an evil demon who possesses as child-killing clown. 30 years later, they reunite to stop the demon once and for all when it returns to their hometown. It is based on a Stephen King novel. The writer and the director was Tommy Lee Wallace. Again, it starred Tim Curry, Seth Green, and Tim Reed. Actors note that Tim Curry's characterization of Pennywise was so creepy and realistic that everyone avoided him during filming. Kind of similar to Bill Skarsgård, if you've seen, of course, the new one. Fun fact about the new one is when Bill was auditioning for that, he actually talks about a time period where he painted his face and he was actually going down, I believe, Hollywood Boulevard to get to the audition. But a lot of people didn't bother him because, unfortunately, that's normal. But in the novel, Beverly, it's a fun fact, very adult fact, something that, not a lot of people know. The novel, Beverly makes love to all the lucky seven, but Tommy Lee Wallace admitted when coming again to the TV and the movie too, when they did the movie, they opted out of it. They omitted it from the miniseries because it was just something that didn't ring true to him. Harry Anderson improvised a lot of Richie's one-liners. Harry Anderson also passed away the same week that Bill Hader entered talks to play Richie Tozer. Now, I do know too that within the novel, the main villain kid, there is a sequence between him and his lover too, which of course they don't partake in the movie at all. They don't showcase in the movie or even the TV show. So if you haven't read the book, highly recommend it. It basically, it is a demon, yes. But if you explore the world of the gunslinger, which is, of course, Stephen King's version to create like a whole multiverse type deal where everything that he writes is all in one location, is one base story surrounded by the Dark Tower. Now, Dark Tower, if you guys think of a plate, okay, and you guys have sections of your food, well, your food is basically I believe it's like different universes in a way, and right in the middle is a Dark Tower that has a force field around the plate, let's say, as an example. Everything outside of that plate are evil entities like Pennywise It. However, you have the gunslinger who protects the tower, and then you have the Man in Black, which is trying to take down the tower and create mayhem. So if you haven't read it, if you haven't read the Gunslinger Dark Tower series, definitely recommend it. Now, this one I actually added. It wasn't part of the list. However, I personally added it because of the fact that not a lot of people know about this. I didn't know about this until like a few weeks ago. And you can find it on YouTube too. You can watch the whole episode there. And it's called Crybaby Lane. This is actually a Nickelodeon exclusive TV show or TV movie. It scored 5.3 out of 10. It's about Andrew and his older brother Carl enjoy listening to ghost stories that the local undertaker tells them. One night, he tells the tale of a local farmer whose wife gives birth to Siamese twins, one being good in nature while the other was clearly evil. Later, Carl and his friends decide to hold a seance in the cemetery where the good twin is actually buried, but they unintentionally awaken the bad twin instead. Gradually, he possesses nearly everyone in the town and is up to young Andrew to stop him. It was directed by Peter Lauer, stars Peter Lauer and Bob Mittenthal. I'm sorry, that was the writers, but it starred Jim Gaffigan, Jesse Blankfurt, Trey Rogers, and Frank Langella. So about this actual show itself, it only aired once on Nickelodeon. There's a popular internet rumor that said it was never shown again due to a number of complaints from parents who found it inappropriate for a kids network. This turned out to be completely untrue, as it was never banned, just merely forgotten. Since then, Nickelodeon shelved it and did not air it again for over 10 years until the internet response and a vocal cult following urged Nickelodeon to re air it. And on October 31st, 2011, Nickelodeon obliged and later admitted they had forgotten all about this movie. It's a pretty good, I mean, it's okay movie. Not Halloween Town classic wise, but it's definitely one of those films that if you like to talk about banned films, or if you like to watch the worst film, if you guys like any of those fun facts, or when I say that you've seen one of those movies, it's definitely one to watch. I've personally watched it again. You can find it on YouTube. It's okay. It really is okay. Probably not one of the best TV adaptation of a movies, but again, if you are a fan of weird fun facts and watching movies based on those fun facts, I would definitely recommend it. Now, some of the actual fan favorites, though, because what we did was we posted online and asked all of our followers, family members, friends, whoever wanted to comment onto it, and said, hey, what is your favorite TV show? One of our listeners, she mentioned about Over the Garden Wall, which I didn't write it here, but I believe she said it was on Netflix. And I believe it was Charlie. So there you go, Charlie. It scored an 8.8 out of 10. It's about two brothers find themselves lost in a mysterious land and try to find their way home. Creators was Katie Krentz and Patrick McHale, the writer, of course, of Adventure Time. It actually stars, and this is surprising, Elijah Wood, Melanie Linsky, Christopher Lloyd, John Cleese, Shirley Jones, and the one and only Tim Curry. It was the first miniseries created by Cartoon Network. Sorry, so apparently it's on Cartoon Network. The Beast's true appearance, so fun fact, the Beast's true appearance is visible briefly and only during the climax. The other thing is the opening shows Lorna sorting bones of her victim. So there's some fun facts there. Now, that is it for the top TV shows as well as TV movies too. Now, so let's go into a little fun story about my experience growing up. Now, if you are familiar with me, I have talked about it previously in the past, where I grew up in a household where, my grandmother's house was haunted. She actually is originally from Portugal, and her house from Portugal lived right next to the cemetery, and her house was haunted. So kind of like a little backstory here. If you've ever experienced houses next to the cemetery, sometimes it kind of gets a little weird. So from what I've been told as a kid growing up, is there's been multiple times where my grandmother would come home from work, and she would hear and she would experience and see the kitchen cabinets open, close, slam, shut, open, close, slam, shut. And not only that, but also drawers, to the point where what she would have to do is she'd have to run through the kitchen to get to her room, because that's the only way she was able to get to her room. And it's one of those things that, I can definitely understand that it's scary. It's one of those things that you never forget, especially growing up and experiencing something at my grandmother's house, which kind of traveled to the US in a way, I believe. So that was that experience for her. It did scare her. Now, my grandmother's house, when she moved to Michigan, because she married my grandfather, who was in the Air Force. You can ask any one of my family members. It was extremely haunting in a way, and scary haunting. Of course, my family is shy, so they didn't really want to come on to the show. But you can ask any one of them, and their stories will never change. You can go up to my wife and ask her about these stories, and she will tell you that the stories that I've told her never changed. And the ones that she heard from my family members that I told her about is identical to what I told her. It's because it's all true. Basically, my grandmother and my aunts, my uncles, and my mom, grandfather, obviously, they built a house in a small town called Dowagiac, Michigan. Now, a long time ago, when uh, my uncle, youngest sibling of the four kids, he was attending college at what's called Southwestern Michigan College, and he did a little mapping on the house. And come to find out, at that time, it's not anymore, but at that time, it was the center point of the city. Like you zoom out of Google Maps, and it's boom right there. Now, of course, it has grown since after that, so which is why it's no longer in the middle. But when they were kids, like my mother and my uncle, they would actually find arrowheads in the back of the house on the ground. And I'm not talking about one or two, I'm talking about a lot of them. Because even when I was a kid growing up, we would find them in the backyard all the time. So we don't know exactly what kind of land that was. I know the tribe around that area was Potawatomi Indians. So we don't know what kind of land we were on because, of course, the city sold it. So it could have been like a burial ground. It could have been like where tribes lived. We don't know. All I know is from when my mother was a child to when I was a child. And by the time they moved out, we would always find arrowheads in the backyard. Never the same place. The other thing, too, is when that house is being built, it did burn down once. And then, of course, they rebuilt it back up. And during that time period, I would always hear stories about, the house is haunted, the house is haunted. Some of the stories I would hear is my uncle his bedroom was on the second floor. And if you think of Michigan, there's basements. So the family fun, video games, entertainment area that was down in the basement, it was all furnished. Then you go up to the first floor, and that's where we had a formal dining room, formal living room, and stuff. And then at that point, you would also have, of course, my uncle's bedroom too. That was on the second floor, and he would always talk about how he would always hear scrapes in the middle of the night. And I'm not talking about inside of the house. I'm talking about outside of the house. Because where his bedroom was located was, of course, right in the corner of the house. So he would always hear these scrapes coming off of the outside of the house. The scary part about that, of course, it does have to deal with then going outside, seeing the house completely painted, except that section where there were scratch marks on it. I'm not talking about like small ones. No, I'm talking about large scratch marks. Like if you legitimately took a rake and you scraped the back of the house over and over and over again. And it would be like that. So that was one story that I heard. The story is about how him and his friend was walking around the block, just walking from friend's house, stuff like that. And nobody in the house was home. They're all out for the night. So what ended up happening is, of course, they're walking to the front yard and they see a red light out of nowhere. Now, they saw this red light start from my grandmother's room on the second floor, go past my uncle's room, go down the steps, and from that point, go across the hallway, stop right in front of the basement door. Now, that happened because of the fact that every night at midnight, you would hear footsteps. And it's clockwork every single night. Clockwork of footsteps would start from my grandmother's house or room, go to my uncle's, down the steps, go through the formal living room and dining room, stop at the basement. Clockwork, over every single night. Now, I didn't actually believe this when I heard the story. So one night, my uncle and I went to like Best Buy, that's about 45 minutes away, and got to my grandma's place. And my grandmother took my sister to Chuck E. Cheese's, which is close to Best Buy. So it's about, again, 45 minutes away in that direction. So it's him and I down in the basement. And back then he had an Apple computer. Now, if you guys remember the early 2000s Apple with like the turquoise background, the red background of the back plate, because that's how computers were, is they were never flat. They also had like a curvature to them. So he had the turquoise one. And for those computers, you could play regular PlayStation games on them. So he didn't own a PlayStation, but he would play the video games on the computer. And he was playing Resident Evil. Now, during this time, I had to be maybe 12. And before you say, it could have been your imagination and everything like that, just let me finish. I heard the steps. What happened during that time period, my uncle went to use the bathroom, and the bathroom was located in the basement. However, I was doing something that he told me never to do. He would get mad at me, and I was coloring with his college highlighters. So I was coloring with the college highlighters, and I heard footsteps starting from the second floor. Step, 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 down the stairs, step, 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 and then stop at the basement. So I look to my right, waiting for him to come down, and I see nobody coming down. I shout out his name. No answer. Then I hear a toilet flush, and out pops my uncle out of the basement bathroom. He never went upstairs. He never went to the second floor. And even by telling you guys this, all the stories, it gives me goosebumps. Because if you've ever experienced anything like this, you would know the feeling. Another story is, of course, when my sister, not my sister, my mom was younger, she actually experienced many things. Like, for example, she shared a bedroom with my aunt. There was a moment when she felt somebody sit on her bed, thinking that it was my aunt, and she just swats away, right? Move or get out of the way. And nothing. She literally felt nothing. But yet, she felt the bed rise, like if somebody got up. And that's crazy if you really think about it, because the whole time she was sleeping right next to her. Another time was my uncle. He went downstairs to my mom and my aunt's bedroom, and he was scared because what ended up happening is between his room and the kitchen, there's a bathroom. And with that, he would always lock the bathroom door all the time. In the middle of the night, it opened. He went over. Nobody was on the other side. And it was unlocked. Now, my uncle doesn't really get scared out of anything. Military guy, headstrong, don't really show his feelings type individual. But he was scared that night. He was petrified because he didn't know what was going on. So that was my grandmother's house. Sure, other family members have a few other stories that they could share. Absolutely. I can't speak on their behalf. Those are just the stories I know. And with that, comes to the end of this week's episode. Stay tuned for next week, where I will be discussing the best animated horror series, as well as tell you a few stories of the house that I grew up in the same town, different house. So stay tuned, have a good night, and hope you enjoyed.